Welcome to Gourmet Gagee again. Today we're making a really delicious sweet treat for you. They're called Kolachy, and what they are is they are a dough that is made with flour, egg yolks, yeast, sour cream, butter, and a little bit of salt. Then we will grind our walnuts and we will add to those milk, sugar, and butter. And trust me, these are delicious. Now first we start by grinding our walnuts. I freeze my walnuts because they don't go rancid, and when you do grind them, you don't get that oil out of them. So here we go. I'm using 1 pound of walnuts after I add all of this. Now I continue grinding the walnuts until I'm finished. This is a small processor, so it's taking longer. But if you have a larger one, it definitely will get done in one whip. Here we go. So that finishes grinding the nuts. Okay, now in the pot that I'm going to cook the nuts, I will put in, I'll start off with a 1/2 cup of sugar, a 1/2 cup of milk, a 1/4 pound of butter, because nuts are kind of oily, so you really don't need too much butter. And I'll move this around here a little bit, and then I will put in my nuts. And I can tell already that's not enough milk. Under low heat, I cook my nuts, but I know just by looking at them that I will need more milk and more sugar. But the sugar will be a matter of my taste. Some people like it sweeter, some not so sweet. Now that was another 1/2 cup of milk, which is about a total of a whole cup of milk. And now we're adding more sugar, a little bit at a time. As they cook, the nuts absorb a lot of the sugar, and when they cool down, trust me, we've probably got enough of milk in here. But they definitely taste the best cooked. One of the things that I feel make my nuts better is because I cook them. Some people simply mix the nuts with sugar and put them in, but you don't get that caramel flavor out of them. Now I cook them until all the ingredients begin to bubble, and then the milk soaks up into the nuts, and that, in my opinion, is the best way to do it. You can see how it's beginning to bubble at the bottom. So here we are. I've been cooking this, and it's really important to continue to stir it. And when it gets kind of this caramely color, then you know it's just about done. As it cools, the nuts will soak up more of the milk and they will be perfect, but it has to get cold before you work with it. It definitely looks like a caramel. The nuts are cooling, and while they cool, we will work on the dough. So first I want to separate 2 eggs, because all I need is 2 egg yolks. So I crack it, break it. And here's my one yolk. And my other yolk. And sometimes you might get a little bit of egg yolk into your white. Well, usually I use my whites that are left over. I'll put them in a baggie and stick them in the freezer, and when I get enough of them, I will make an angel food cake. But if a little bit of the yolk gets into the white, you just take the shell and you just go like that and it will pull it right out. So that's just a little tip about eggs. I have about 1/4 cup of warm water in here, not hot, just warm. And I'm gonna put maybe 2 teaspoons full of yeast. One thing about yeast is, other than doing a crazy amount, you really can't use too much yeast. You wouldn't want to put a tablespoon and a half, but 2 teaspoons, that's fine. Now, yeast feeds off of sugar and flour, so you have a choice. You can either put a little bit of flour in here and see it bubble, or just a dab of sugar. I'll take the dab of sugar. Put maybe half a teaspoon of sugar, and we'll wait and see if the yeast is working properly. Now, if you buy the little 3 packs, again, maybe you would use 2 of them. I buy the large economy size. And I refrigerate it and it stays for a very long time. Now that the yeast is bubbling, so we know that it's fresh and it's working. So we'll just leave it alone and we'll begin with our other ingredients in the mixer, and then at one point we will add the yeast. Okay, now I'm measuring out 4 cups of flour, just regular flour, not cake flour, just plain old flour. And just in case, I will hold on, I might have to add a little more, so I'll just set that on the side. Now I'm going to add a 1/2 pound of butter into my mixer and cream it. I will add more butter later, but this is the way we will begin. And I just use the paddle, I don't use the dough hook. I'm mixing the butter, and it is unsalted butter. I always use unsalted butter when I bake. You can add a little salt, but it doesn't make any difference. It is necessary to use unsalted butter when you bake. Now I'm going to add the egg yolks. There they go. Now I'm going to add about 2 cups of the flour. And turn that back on. Now I'm going to add a 1/3 cup of sour cream. Now I'm going to add my 1/3 cup of flour, and after that I will add my yeast. Now I'm going to add the yeast. You can see how it has grown. I put a little bit of flour and a little bit of sugar in it. So this is the next step. Now I'm going to add my 4th cup of flour. Now I'm going to add my last 2 sticks of butter. Altogether we will have used 1 pound of butter. I took a little bit of the dough out of the mixer to check it, and it still feels a little bit sticky, so I'm going to add some more flour. I'm going to check it again and see how it is now. There we go. Now that is just right. Not too sticky, just right. Now here's a little tip. You see how the dough is pulling away from the sides? Then you know it's done. Now I'm going to transfer this into another bowl because sometimes at the bottom of the bowl there's still some flour residue, but guess what? This time there's not. It's as good as can be. See, just like it should be. It's a winner. And I'm going to flatten it down and refrigerate it because it's easier to work with once it's, oh there, see, I was right, there was still a tiny bit of flour there. Now the dough has been in the refrigerator for about half an hour, 45 minutes. You don't want it to get too hard because then you can't handle it. So now I'm going to sprinkle some sugar on the countertop. And I'm going to set my dough on here, move it around on both sides, maybe give it a little more sugar. Now this isn't all my nuts, but my nuts are ready. So what I do is I kind of scoop about this much and I set them aside. And then I cut them into about four pieces because the cookies are small and that's about all that you need in each one. So now I'm going to roll up the dough out on the sugar. And you don't want to keep the dough in the refrigerator too long because then it gets too hard and it's really difficult to roll. So now that I have rolled out the dough, I kind of fashioned this for myself so that all the cookies would be the same size. And then I just continue to cut into the squares. Oop. Cut my squares and pulled out the dough that's in between. and I'll re-roll that later. Then I take these and I put a little bit of my nut into the center. And then I roll it like this, because since they have the yeast in them, they will grow. And I set them on my pan, and I continue until I fill my pan up. I turned the oven on, and I turned it up to about 360. It might take a little longer, but you'll see. I will show you how they look when they're done. They simply get puffed up, and they're brown, and they're delicious. And I just continue doing this until I finish what I have here, and then I get more dough out, and I continue the whole thing till it's all gone. The first time I tasted this particular recipe, I was at a 75-year anniversary of a neighbor of ours. And I mean, imagine somebody being married for 75 years. And their daughter got the recipe for me. It was just one of the best ones I've ever had. Now I picked up the sections that aren't there, and because it gets kind of sticky because it already has some sugar in it, I just put a little bit of flour in, and it just helps to roll them out better. Because there's plenty of sugar in them already. Now this recipe will probably make about 8 dozen cookies. So you can make them larger if you want. Naturally that will be less. So now they are ready to go in the oven. And I have them, I put a piece of parchment paper on my baking tray. If you don't have parchment paper, you can just spread some Crisco or some kind of shortening over it. Okay, now I set my oven temperature 360, and they will go in and bake for maybe 25 minutes, half an hour. I kind of judge them, but when I see they're nice and brown. And my dad used to tell me to burn them because he liked that caramely taste. Now there they go, and we'll set the timer. Okay, the cookies are done. I'll pull this tray out. And you can see they're like a nice golden brown. If you like, you can powder sugar them when they get cool, but they're fine just the way they are. They're out of the oven, and I'm taking them off to cool, and then I will continue with the rest of my dough, doing it the same way, and everybody loves them. And if I can do it, you can do it. So here are a few of our Kolachy. They are really delicious, and you will enjoy them. Have a nice day.